next game we're going to be talking about is Gotham from Calliope Games. This is an abstract strategy game for 2 to 4 players. I enjoyed it. I've had a good deal of fun with this game, but it has not left my shelf for probably like the last year, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, so I'm kicking it out. Next, we got Blue Lagoon from Blue Orange Games and Reiner Knizia. This one's actually coming out, I believe, at Gen Con or Origins, and it's a good game. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good to very good, but it was not good enough for me to personally keep because the game is not it's kind of like a static game. It's always going to be the same no matter what. And I just wanted a little bit more choice, a little bit more options. While I still think it's good and I'm giving it to a buddy of mine, not one I'm going to be keeping on my shelf. Next we have Traffic Jam, which is absolutely god-awful. This game, I believe, 1954. So this is a 64-year-old game, and spoiler alert, they were not the best at designing games back then. They had a lot to learn, and we've learned it over the last 64 years. This game is horrible. It's about driving around and trying to get from point A to point B, but you get police tickets, which means then you have to go to point C, and it's just, no thank you. So, continuing onward, we have Remnants from Fireside Games. This is a really interesting post-apocalyptic game. There were speed dice rolling elements to this game. There was building, where you're building up your compound and fighting, and I really enjoyed this game. I thought it was a very good game to a potentially great game with expansions. I'm going to keep it, and hopefully in the next few years they'll release an expansion. Really enjoy this one. Don't let this one fly under your radar. 2 to 4 players is about one of the worst things I can say about it, but still, very enjoyable game going into the collection. Next, we got Beyond Balderdash. Fantastic game. Love this game for a very long time. I finally got my hands on a copy, and it's in my collection. The kids in my class love it, and it's going to be here forever. It's just a game that I'm always going to have. It's so much fun. Next, we have Word Yahtzee, which takes Yahtzee and adds spelling to it, which in theory sounds great. And the bottom line is, if you like Yahtzee and you like spelling games, I think you will enjoy this game. But one of the beautiful things about Yahtzee is that regardless of whether it's your 6-year-old cousin or your 30-year-old uncle or your 75-year-old grandmother, they all had an equal opportunity to win Yahtzee. This takes that away. It's your typical word game where if you're really good at spelling words and you know a lot of words, you have a large vocabulary, you're probably going to win. Not one I could really recommend unless you're in that very small niche of loving Yahtzee and loving word games. But other than that, it does do a pretty good job of mimicking Yahtzee. Next, we have the Miss Piggy card game, or the very fashionable Miss Piggy card game from Milton Bradley. You probably already know what I'm going to say about this. Yeah, you don't know, because actually it's a good to great My First Trick-Taking Game. And that's pretty much what it should be called. Miss Piggy's My First Trick-Taking Game. I'm going to keep it. It's a great way to teach kids trick-taking games. It's short, it's simple, easy to learn, easy to teach, and it's a pretty good game. So very pleasantly surprised with Miss Piggy card game. If you see this one at your local thrift shop and you have youngins, check it out. That being said, it's only for 3 or 4 players, which is a little bit of a bummer. Next, we have My Little Scythe, which is absolutely outstanding. I gave it a Bowers Best seal. It is probably my family game of the year, and highly recommend this one if you have kids ages 5 to 12 years old. Just as simple as that. It's an outstanding family game. They successfully took Scythe, shrunk it, made it cute, threw it into a game, and it works that way. There's alternate paths to victory. There's different factions. You're going to have asymmetrical abilities once you start upgrading things. Love it, love it. And amazing components, too. That's My Little Scythe into my collection. Next, we have the Dresden Files Cooperative Card Game. I really enjoyed this one when it came out. A buddy of mine brought it over. We played it 7, 8 times, something like that. Crazy. Really enjoyed it. He let me borrow it, so I shoot a review with it. I gave him back the game, and I just don't have the game. But they recently had 2 expansions came out. They said, hey, do you want to review the expansions? I said, hey, I don't have the base game. They said, hey, we'll send you a base game and the expansions. And I was like, hey, that's awesome. And so, yeah, into my collection. Fantastic cooperative game. 1 to 5 players. I liked all the player counts. It's very good at solo. And if you like the Dresden Files card, if you like the Dresden Files books, or I think there's a TV show, absolutely recommend checking this one out because it is a very rock-solid game. Next, we have Zigzag. Pretty much this tried to be a more gamery version of Connect 4. You're trying to connect 4 of your little doodad, your little pieces in the game by building like kind of railroads along the board, so to speak, where your pieces can travel along those rails and you're trying to get Connect 4. I didn't like it because all the pieces start off in the same spot, which I'm sure is necessary for balance issues, but overall I think it's a good game, but it's not one worth keeping. That is Zigzag. Next we have Intensity from Simply Fun, and I just want to take away the fun and say simply, because it is. This is a very cut and dry, simple trivia game where you're trying to move your way around the board by getting questions correct. However, it is not fun. That part should not be on there. This is an absolutely terrible, god-awful trivia game. Every single person I played it with didn't like it. Most of them hated it and said they never wanted to play it again, and I'm in that same boat. So it is a trivia game. Your answer is going to be below 10, and you have this little spinner, and you're going to put it on the number you want. But the question is, do you want to answer the question? Because if you get the question wrong, you are going to go back spaces. How do you determine how many spaces you go forward or back? Well, you roll dice. So yeah, it's just not fun. Trivia games where you're penalized for guessing incorrectly, just not fun. Because you know what? How are you supposed to be better at that? I mean, I don't know. Just intensity. This is crap. There's a reason you've never heard of it. It's bad. Steer clear. Speaking of bad, we have Fruit Bandits, which looks bad. It looks like garbage. Look at that. That looks terrible. The cards feel weird. Look at these cards. Do you want to play this game? Oh god, it looks absolutely atrocious, but it's actually a great game, gameplay-wise. Yeah. What are you gonna do? Miss Piggy's card game and Fruit Bandits. That's what you get here from Bowers Game Corner. Go pick these bad boys up. It's really great. It's a great card game. I'm going to keep it. It's a very dirt simple family weight game in which you were either going to farm your crops or go off and try to steal other people's crops, and you're trying to outthink, outsmart, outmaneuver people, but at the same time it's the kind of game you can play with a 6-year-old and just say, play a card every turn, let's see what happens. Really enjoy that one. Immediately into my collection. That needs to be reprinted. Get on that, like Mayday Games. I feel like that should be a Mayday Games thing. Next we have the By Order of the Queen mini expansion. So By Order of the Queen, it's a game I enjoyed, but it had some very, very large flaws. It was too long. It was too random. This is an expansion that fixes absolutely none of that. I don't like this expansion. I have a very hard time recommending this expansion. So, what does it add? It adds 4 new Queen's Orders. That's cool. Those are things you just mix in, and it makes the game have a little bit more variability. Always fantastic. You have 18 event cards. They make the game more difficult. So, it's a difficulty modifier. So, if you really like the game, but you thought it was too easy, which, by the way, it's not that particularly easy because of how much luck there is, then yeah, maybe. But then you get alternate art hero cards. So, essentially, you can take out your old cards and you can put in new cards. So, it's not adding anything as so much as replacing something else in the game. And then you have 2 blank hero cards in case you like to draw. Do people do that? Let me know in the comments below. Do you know someone who actually does that? Not just the stats. I want like actual artwork on these cards. And then 8 in-plans location cards. That's the best part of this expansion. Overall, no. It's just not a good expansion. Don't get it. Next we have Star Trek Panic. This is a game I really enjoyed. It is Castle Panic, but with a Star Trek theme, and you make this cool spaceship in the middle, and it's a really fun game, and I think it's a great game, but I just never get it played. And here's the thing, I actually in a math trade just recently got Castle Panic along with every single expansion, which means it's not gonna get played. And as much as I like this game and I want to keep this game because eventually I might play it again, I gotta get rid of it because it's just taking up space, and I need to add these other games which will sit there for months and not get played. So next we have Inner Circle, the survival game with the unique 4-level game board. This is a really stinking cool player elimination game for 75% of the game. Then you get to the last fourth of the game, and it stinks and it's boring. So Inner Circle is a really interesting concept of the game where you are going to be moving your pieces around in different directions. It's a memory game, so you have to remember what space you're on, and it will tell you how many spaces you get to move. But your goal is to get into these little circles. So there's a piece of cardboard here, 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 and there's different circles cut into each of them. And if you make it to the circles, once those circles are full, you physically lift the piece of cardboard. All the pieces that died are taken off the board, and you only have the ones, the survivors left. It's actually a really cool game until you get to the end, and then the end is kind of boring. So overall, I'm probably going to put it in my classroom, but then I'm probably just going to end up giving it away to a kid. Last but not least, we have Advance to Boardwalk from Parker Bros. The Parker Brothers, they got, they haven't anything reviewed up here. This is another incredibly pleasant surprise, almost. So Advance to Boardwalk is actually an area control. It is a dice rolling area control game, which does not sound like Monopoly, and it's actually really pretty decent. Except for one thing, which are what are called fortune cards, which are just incredibly random and swingy and ruin the game, which is a bummer. So Advance to Boardwalk could have potentially been a good to great old school hobby game. Instead, it's still good. I think it's a good game, but it had so much potential. So it's a very disappointing game to me, but still not a bad game. Advance to Boardwalk, if you're for some reason collecting the old Monopoly games or something and you actually want one that you'd like to play, this one might be the one you want to check out because it's actually not terrible and it does have gamery mechanisms in it. But that has been another edition of Games In, Games Out. If you enjoyed, please be sure to click on that subscribe button down below. And if you happen to be at Origins 2018, because I think I'm posting this video the morning of, reach out to me somehow. Shoot me an email or a message on BoardGameGeek. Hopefully I'll be able to check those out. I would love to sit down and play a game because I'm going to be there doing nothing but playing a game, drinking, and eating. It's going to be glorious. No interviews whatsoever. But if you are, shoot me a message. Let's see if we can get together and play a game. And as always, thanks for your time, YouTube. Ahoy there, YouTube! I'm back again for another episode of Games In, Games Out, where I talk about games that are going into my collection, games that are going out of my collection, and games that are somewhere in the middle. They're kind of short little reviews about all the different games that I have in my collection. So, let's get started. First and foremost, we got Uno Dominoes. And if you ever thought to yourself, man, I love Uno, but I wish it was in domino form, then this is the game for you. And if not, then this is a very easy pass. For me personally, this is one that I thought was, hey, this is a neat idea. But I kind of think I'd rather just play Uno if I had to be forced to one. So this is going to go into the collection of games that I give to my kids in my classroom because I'm sure some of them will absolutely love it and some of them love Uno. Next we have Ogre Cheerleaders from, what's that company? Pole Warrior Games. This is one I just recently reviewed, brand new off Kickstarter, and it just feels like a game that doesn't need to exist. This really feels like it's an okay game. I don't want you to steer you away from this game and tell you it's a terrible game. No, it's just an okay game. This feels like the kind of game that you put on Kickstarter when you're testing out the waters of Kickstarter to, see if it's your sort of thing. Maybe build up a fan base before you launch your big game. This does not feel like a passion project. This does not somebody's favorite game of all time. Some game that they're super proud of. It's just a really simple game, and it annoyed me because it said 2-ish players. So this one is also going into my kill closet. One day it'll be sold for probably like a buck or two at a flea market. Next we have Manhattan Project 2, Minutes to Midnight. And I did a Kickstarter video for this one. This is a great game. Wholeheartedly recommend this one. Still in the shrink, but this one's probably going to hit the table in the next few weeks. This one is going to go into my collection. From there, I'm not quite sure. I hope it stays there because I know it's a great game. But it's also one of those games where I know I'm only going to be able to play it once every 4 to 6 months. And hopefully I can remember the rules. But for now, Manhattan Project, Minutes to Midnight is going into the collection, and hopefully I can remember the rules so it can stay in the collection. Next we have Drop It from Cosmos. This one is a brand spanking new one. It's a really simple 3D game where you're going to set up like this 3D thing, and there's clear glass there, and you're going to be dropping pieces into it. Is there a picture on the back? Yeah, something like that. I actually screwed up a huge rule in the review. I've since played it. I like it a little bit better than when I played it before, but it's still, it's good to me. I don't think it's great, and it's just not my style of game, to be honest with you. I have Tetris Tower 3D, which is a very similar game, but with Tetris-y stuff. I like it better than this, but this is a good game. It's a good family 2-player game. It goes 2 to 4, but honestly, you're not going to want to play it with more than 2 players. One that's going out of my collection, though, because it just doesn't do enough fantastic. Next, we have Log Jam, a really bizarre game that comes in like this log-shaped thing, and you have to put little pieces, little Tootsie Roll-looking things inside of the log, and if the Tootsie Rolls poke out the top, then you get points, and the person with the fewest points wins the game. It's a really bizarre game, but actually it was surprisingly decent, and the kids in my class really enjoyed it. For me personally, it's not one I'm going to keep. This is also going to go with the Uno Dominoes as one of the games that I give away to kids when they have great behavior days. So Log Jam, it's good, but not really worth hunting down, in my personal opinion, even though some of the kids in my class might disagree. Next we have Pixel Glory, Light and Shadow. This is an expansion to the original Pixel Glory, which I've never had the opportunity to play, so don't ask me anything about it. I thought it was a good game. That's it. I didn't think it was a great game. I didn't think it was a bad game. I thought it was a good game that has the potential to be great. And here's what I said in the review. I pretty much said, I think it's a good game. I just wanted more meat on the bones. And it reminded me a little bit of, like, say, a Boss Monster or something. Where, and I use this example, actually, that a buddy of mine, he was huge into Boss Monster, but then as he slowly played more and more hobby games with more mechanisms and more different things going on, Boss Monster just became a little too simple for him. Kind of like the Munchkin. Well, Munchkin's not the good example. But I felt that way about this game. I think if I would have gotten this game when I first got into the hobby, I would have really loved this game. But now I'm like, it's good. So this one's actually going into the collection to get rid of. Next, we have 2 games that are in the same boat. They're games that I actually really liked and enjoyed, but they are collecting dust, unfortunately. And that is Cult following, a party storytelling game where you have to talk about a cult. Like, it's on the fly, you have to make up a cult and make up different aspects of the cult. It's a really fun storytelling game, but here's the thing. I created my own storytelling game, like Kickstarted a couple years ago, and I still like my own game better. So if I'm going to go with an adult theme, adult storytelling game, I'm going to go with mine over this one. So unfortunately, Colt, despite the fact I like the theme and I like the humor that this game brings, is out of the collection. It also hasn't got played in quite some time. Same with Batman Almost Got Him card game. This is a really stinking cool werewolf-esque game, 5 to 8 players. But here's the thing, it requires a moderator and I have to reread the rules every time I do it. That being said, it went over really well each time I played it, but it just doesn't hit the table that often because I don't have those sort of nights typically where it's like, hey, let's get together 6, 7, 8 people and play a little social deduction game. Still a good game. If you get into that sort of game, definitely recommend it. But for me personally, this one just can't have the shelf space if it's not getting played. Next, we have Shards of Infinity from Stoneblade Entertainment, the same people who make now they make that other deck building game that's really stinking popular. One of the first ones that had the crappy artwork. Can't think of it off the top of my head. Somebody mentioned in the comments below. This is a good deck builder game. I will be keeping it because it has a small box size, easy to learn, easy to teach. Like, it's one of those games that once you read the rules, you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what's going on here. It has some really cool elements where you're charging like this little thing on a dial that you have, and if it ever gets to 30, you become like omnipotent and super powerful, and if you can cycle back to one card, you just destroy everybody. I'm keeping it, despite the fact I don't foresee myself playing it in the near future, with the hopes that the expansion that will come out, because it's definitely going to have an expansion in the near future if it sells well, will bump this from a good game to a great game. Plus, I'm starting to realize that deck builders are my favorite genre of game. So small box plus a good game that has the potential to get even better means this one's going into my collection, but if I don't see an expansion in the next year or so, probably going to go out of my collection because there's still other deck builders I would much rather play. Next, we have Heir to the Throne from Amber Palace Games. This is a game that I've had for quite some time, but I just had not gotten it to the table. I finally got it to the table a couple times, and this game is all about trying to get I believe it's a great grandson, and have them be a boy, and not have them be have them have their thingy work and also not be a bastard. And no, I'm being serious here. That is actually what this game is about. You're creating this family tree and going down, and the rule booklet is god-awful. Like, it's a really bad rule booklet. There's just giant walls of text all over the place. It's one of those ones where you start reading the rule booklet and then you're like, nope, I don't want to go to bed early, so I'm not reading this rule booklet. That being said, I really enjoyed the theme of this game, and the theme was a very funny game, and we had legitimately hilarious moments with this game, but there's just not enough meat on the bones. There was an expansion they were planning. I doubt this game was popular enough to actually warrant that expansion, and I think if that expansion would have been in this box and there was just an extra added little element to the game, that and a better rule booklet, this one could have stayed in my collection. But as it is now, Heir to the Throne, going out of the collection, despite the fact the theme really does come across pretty well. Next we have, Who Did It? This one is from Blue Orange Games. This one's immediately going into my classroom collection. It is a speed game where you're going to have a handful of cards that have different animals on it in your color, and so someone will start off and they'll say, they'll put down a rabbit, and they'll say, my rabbit didn't poop, but somebody's fish pooped, and then you have to put your fish down as fast as humanly possible, and when you do, you say, my fish didn't poop, but somebody's cat did, and then somebody has to play their cat as fast as humanly possible. It's a really quick speed game. The kids in my class have absolutely went nuts for this game, though. We have played and played and played and played and played this game, and I don't see it not being played anytime soon. Great for ages 6+. Really enjoy Who Did It. Kids have a lot of fun with it, and I actually enjoy the game a good deal as well, so instantly going into my classroom collection. Next, we have another game that is instantly going into my classroom collection that the kids also really stinking enjoyed, and that is Boomo from Mattel Games. This is an old school mass market game. I don't think it's available right now, which is a bummer, because it's actually a good to great mass market game where you're trying... It's kind of like Hot Potato, where everyone's not trying to make the bomb go over 60 seconds, because once the bomb goes over 60 seconds, you have to flip over one of your bombs, and if you lose all 3 of your bombs that are in front of you, then you lose the game. It also has a huge variety for a mass market game of specialty cards that will change the time, reverse, skip, do this, do that. I really dug this game. The kids in my class went nuts about this game. Boomo is going to be in my classroom for a very long time. Great family game on the mass market side. And also, I could say this is a children's game. If you have kids, I'd say 9, 10 plus. So Bumo the card game, also a great player reference card, oddly enough. Even though there's only 2 of them when there should be 6, which is odd. But yes, that one's immediately going into my classroom collection. Next, we have Doodle Dice from Jax. This is a very simple dice rolling game where the dice are going to make a variety of different pictures. So you're going to have all these dice in here, and the dice have different... Let me get one out. They have different shapes on them like this, and you're trying to make different pictures of different things like pigtails and flowers and whatnot. And you have to get 1 card of every color. This one's going to be going into my classroom for a limited time test run. The kids liked it, but they weren't crazy about it. And I do have a limited space in my classroom for games, so I have a feeling that while this one is going into my classroom for now, it's eventually going to end up on that shelf of games for kids who get good behavior and birthdays and stuff like that. So go into my classroom for now, but not one I can really recommend unless it's a try before you buy sort of situation. Next, we have Bemused, a game of doubt and dread from Devious Weasel Games. This is a really interesting game in which you are going to be playing as a character, a dancer, a poet, a thespian, a painter, a singer, a musician, and you're going to have somebody that you're obsessed with. That's going to be somebody else at the table, and then you're going to try to either drive that person insane or keep that person sane or kill that person or make sure that person stays alive. You're going to have a secret objective, and then you're going to be going around spreading dread and doubt about everyone else. I enjoyed this game. I thought it was a good game. I really did enjoy it, but it has a very limited player count at 4 to 6 players, and I liked it best at 5 and 6 players. And while I thought it was a good game, to a very good game, I felt like the people around me enjoyed the game more than I did. And I could just see me being in a 5 and 6 player situation and people being like, hey, you want to play Bemused? And I'd be like, well, I'd rather play something else. Maybe Don't Mess with Cthulhu or Battle Goats or, any other number of games that have that player count. So this one is not staying in the collection, despite the fact I do think it's a good to very good game, just not one that did enough for me personally. But still, a very interesting game to check out. I like that one. Next, we have Chameleon, which once again, I really enjoyed this game, but flipped the thing from Bemused. Other people I played with did not like it as much as I did. So the Chameleon is a little bit like Spyfall, where one person is the chameleon, they try to blend in, and everybody else is trying to figure out who the chameleon is. It's a very light, simple game. It takes about 15 minutes, but once again, it's 3 to 8 players. It plays best at the medium to high player counts, and when I get to those player counts at my house, I would just rather split it up into 2 3-player games or 2 4-player games and play something a little bit meatier. So while I do enjoy this game, still one that's going out of the collection because it hasn't got played in probably 5 or 6 months. Next, we have Rummikub and Travel Rummikub. So Rummikub is a classic game of trying to stretch your brain and figure out how to get rid of all the tiles on your little board. It is a very interesting game, and I think it's a good game. It's just not one that I ever see myself playing. The kids in my class enjoyed it, but it's a little bit of a mental workout because you really have to look at all the information out on the board and then all the information you have in front of you and try and stretch your brain because on your turn you can manipulate every single tile that is out there and every single tile in front of you to the way you want it to, as long as you still have 3 of a kind everywhere and a run of 3 of the same color everywhere. It's a little bit difficult to explain. It's an easy to learn, easy to teach game, which is good, but it's still, I feel like it's a game that I like the mechanism, but I want to see the mechanism in something else. And I'm really surprised it hasn't been introduced into other games. So Rummikub, an old school classic game. I think it's a good game. It's just not one that I'm going to keep. And also I have Travel Rummikub, which I have not reviewed, even though I told you I review every game, but essentially I'm reviewing Rummikub, so whatever. They're both going to go into that stack of games up top that are for good behavior with kids. Next, we have Where's Mr. Wolf from Blue Orange Game. This is a children's game. Age is 4+. I also play it. I play it with my 5-year-old. He really enjoys it. It's a very light, simple game, cooperative game, where you're trying to flip over tiles and then flip over little circles and put those circles into different barnyards because Mr. Wolf is coming and he's going to massacre and kill every single animal in the barnyard. So you have to get all those animals into the barn first, but they have to be the exact right combination of animals into the different barns. My son loved it, so I'm keeping it. I thought it was good. It's a little bit easy on the easiest setting, but once you bump it up to the more difficult settings, it is a good deal of fun. This is probably one that I'm going to keep until my son gets to about 6 or 7, and then I'll probably outgrow it. But for now, Where's Mr. Wolf? I'm keeping this one specifically for my son because he really did enjoy it. Also great components as per normal from Blue Orange Games. If you have kids ages 4 to 7 years old, definitely recommend checking that one out. Next, we have Mana Forge from Mystic Tiger Games. This is a completely themeless game where you're going to be rolling dice and acquiring different kinds of mana. Think earth, wind, water, fire, so you can purchase different cards, and then those different cards will give you different bonuses. And you're going to use mana to buy cards that will give you mana so you can turn those around. And it's essentially just juggling a whole bunch of different elements in order to eventually turn all those elements into victory points. That's the kind of game it is. You're going to be building up an engine. It has a lot of cool cards at first glance, but eventually this is one that I'm not keeping because I really feel like it needs an expansion for 2 main reasons. The first one is, despite the fact there's lots and lots of cool cards, almost all the cool cards are just, hey, if you have this red dice, then you can do this thing. But then it's like, hey, if you have this blue dice, then you can do this thing that's kind of like the same thing as the red dice. Or, hey, if you have the purple dice, then you can do this cool thing, which is pretty much just what you're doing with the red and the blue dice, but with purple stuff. It has that issue. Also, I felt like it was really imbalanced. There's one particular strategy you can try to go for, which is to get these wands, and how it works is the more wands you have, the more points you get. You've seen it in tons of games. But this one, it just doesn't work. I have gotten 7 out of a possible 9 wands in the game, and I still got crushed, which really shouldn't happen, because you can only get 9 cards, and 7 of mine were wands. I mean, come on. So yeah, Mana Forge, I think it's good. I think it needed a little bit more balancing. An expansion would make it even better. I think it's a good game. And I think some people were really going to enjoy it, but for me personally, did not do enough to warrant keeping in the collection. Last but not least, we have Witch from Milton Bradley. This game is very, very stinking old. I think it is, let's see, 1971. It is 47 years old, and holy dear God, it is a terrible pile of atrocious crap. Oh, it's such a bad game. So the primary mechanism in this game is that there is a 3-dimensional witch's house that you're going through. Think kind of like 13 Dead End Drive. And in the middle, there's like this little roof, or maybe you can see it in the picture of little Billy there dropping the marble. But you drop the marble, and the marble goes down into one of the 4 different rooms, and if you're in a danger spot in those rooms, then the kids get killed, and they get knocked back to the first spot or something, because the witches are trying to murder you. I don't know exactly what the theme's about. The primary mechanism in the game is that you roll and move, and then you draw a card. There's only 3 kind of cards in the game. One of the cards turns you into a mouse, and then if you're a mouse, you don't actually get to roll and move anymore. You just stay there until you draw a card that turns you not into a mouse, which can take a very long time. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 turns in some instances. And let me check that. Yeah, that's not fun. Also, 1/3 of the cards are going to tell you to drop a marble in, but if no one's in the danger zone, then there's no point to even dropping the marble in, which is dumb as well. It's just a really terribly designed game, which is unfortunate because it does look super cool.